for a future for everyone. Uh, I reckon that it would be good for us to walk everybody through just a little whole brain functioning itself. And where anyone is like that, you're getting raised of your quality of life score, you see. Is that something that you might be interested in? Because the show could really install all of this and give you the accessing cues right now to be able to be triggered automatic of the outcome that you want more. You want a longer life. So why would it be that anybody wouldn't, of course, focus on what your nutrient is, like food, for instance, where this is? And what about the whole brain functioning pattern? So when you're putting these things together, it's really more an outwardly meditation, you see. And it's a fasting, yes, it is, from all the lived habits that could have not let you sort of rehabilitate properly, the body system, you see. Yes. So it's really what is the longevity practice that you could pick up from this show? I think you'd really be surprised. It's just like stop chasing all the junk claims, you know what I mean, and follow what's proven, a sensible path that's going to give you support for more you having a longer life. It's really you having had the capacity to be able to be more reduced ever more now, and fixing up and a rewiring of whatever habit has been. And nature really wants to heal you up. That's right. You're going to give nature a chance. All you need to do is to get this input and get the rest and have the body get into balance back again, you see. So practical reset, you see. That's right. You've got tiny little bones that could have got stuck in your vestibular sense, little oculus, and if you do a maneuver and things like that, you could clear these things up. It's really like a spider web that you could imagine, the delicate, strong decentralization of where your body is in this mind web, really. And every strand is vibrating and carrying information. You've got every tiny little strand which movement is felt right through the whole structure, to superposition in a J2 quanta. You're really connected. And you've got this beautiful sunrise, golden hour where everyone is, and light, and how light resets the circadian rhythm, and a very beautiful spiritual type of a big physiological perks which you could be picking up from the show. You've got brain entrainment. You've got analog sculpting, which is sculpting the non-verbal and things which emit patterns more to give you more synced up things, you see. And you've got a very fine gamma wave, which is like a flute wave, and then you've got these other alpha rhythm sorts of shifts where people are. It was for me to do experiments with things and look into the use of squid pieces of device, which is a superquantum interference device, for looking at very, very small pulses and things and field of the body. And so memory really is a waveform that's impressed in the tissue membrane. Most haven't thought about a protoplasm because they don't ever have the thought that, your cell membrane is made up out of colloid of life, which is the smallest building blocks where the chain is, and it's those little spaces which exist there in the colloid of life, which is a cavity resonance on this level, and engage more where signal is, you see. So you've got life colloid, you've got this extracellular cloud, more or less, that's conducting resonance, and you've got tiny little spore, and as life colloid, as spore and double spore, which are joinedness of colloid of life to make up what we would think is the smallest building block of life. And you really, you've got your hippocampus, and how does this, which is a steady state flow, be engaged in being able to cause a memory to become imprinted and things, you see. So junk could be there where it all cemented all of that, and you want to really be able to recall more fast and have or more, life colloid within your intestine. If you mind the gut, you can gut the mind, and all of this is sort of connected quite a bit. So if you had a little bit of a walkthrough, what could it be that you could gain from the show? I think this is some of the more important things. So you could say, relying on non-valid information, it's really you actually getting here a proven, more sensible path to having a longer life and strategy of a more, and instead really having some valid construct and context given to you. So you're relying on what's valid and reliable, meaning it's repeatable and claim the scientific consensus is of what's supportive and tried and true. And if you're not bringing in super position and critical time and these sorts of things, how come you don't have a model that relates to what this is? You see, because this is sort of the like in this state of matter. You've got, of course, a gel phase and you've got a plasma phase, which most people haven't thought about, as a colloid. And so these are things which you and I we could, because life food has its enzymatic activity and whole brain functioning is you being able to have more synchronization where your brain function is, and a needed better habit that allows these things to be. It's possible to really have a multiple aspect more where your health is and giving you more systematic functioning where what's effective. So nature wants to heal you up if you give nature a chance. You apply this as an outward lived meditation more, where you have whole brain functioning patterning, and you've got fasting. You're using fasting from dead food. You're doing raw food nutritional fasting, and you're resting. So you're dealing with balance issues where older population is, and you've got this otolith stone, little stones which pass by heads, which give you sensation of where you are, where balance is. Where somebody's been laying down a lot, they can do a bit of a manoeuvre and clear away what would be in a congested state just a little bit and giving the sensation of vertigo. And so older people, where they do this Jubb manoeuvre, they're laying over where your back is, and you're letting your head hang over the back, the bed, and you're turning your head to the side that's most comfortable, and then you're rolling over to that side, so that your head now is hanging, of course, still over the bed, but now it's you're facing the floor. And so what you've done is to roll your head from side to side then, and then it's possible to be able to get up, you see. So this is just a small manoeuvre, because you never did any spinning or did anything like this. It's the exercise and things that assist to cause a freeing up of more movable bone where the vestibular otolith is, and resetting your sensation so that every little tiny small stuck bone can no longer be giving vertigo sorts of sensations when you would have gone to sort of walk and things. So I just pointing this out because, look, you've got beautifulness where nature is, and the mimickedness of this, like a spider's web woven, of course, is really beautiful because it's symbols of nature as language. And you could see how this is built, and it could tell you what the winter is going to be like that's coming. You could read the way what the spider has done where the web is. And so it's serving us sort of as a visual foreknowing more of what the weather is going to be like, where the winter is and things. And so stability and also delicate modelness where the nature is like this. You've got decentralization where perfectness is, and all interconnectedness in various systems sort of is spontaneous. It's creative intelligence, and it's a creative force of the cosmic, universe, really. So delicate yet strong, that structure where the web is sort of symbolizing everything for us. And it's hard for us to unravel, but yet what is at the day's end of the sun and rain and wind, you could note, of course, what's very fragile, which is precious. So the beauty, of course, like of the petals of a rose, it's the bush is its finest expression, and you could say also the preciousness of it is the fragileness of it's only to last for the days of the sun and the wind and the rain and things. So something is intricate, isn't it? Where the thread is connection, and many points symbolize like what profound interconnectedness there is, where all living things are. in every single strand of movement, you've got this vibration where it's felt for you throughout your entire structure, you see. So vulnerable where hidden any beauty is, of course, you've really got this fragileness and what's past, where the day is all added up in the sun and the wind and the rain. It's the cobweb which you could see, of course, where it would be the dawning, like in the day, glistening where the sunlight is. You've got this power of an interconnectedness, and it's really, what's going on, where time frame is, where the beginnedness is. You've got the dawning, haven't you? And where the wind is, it belies where you've got clear sky, and the sun ever before the dawn. Of course, you've got this sort of beautiful light bleeding out onto the horizon, and you've got the sun like a borehole, or in a fog sometimes, of course, but missing wherever it is, the burn off is a layer of just this beautiful seamless satin that happens, isn't it? So the brainwaves where entrainment is, you've got a beautiful high, and you've got this contact induction, which people could call that a contact high or something, but it's really your analog sculptedness and the way you're showing up, and how it is this sculptedness of your body and your mind is followed. It's really the resonance that's being conducted where the pool would be, and this is all happening through a JC quanta. So it's at a quadrillionth of a light second. Something is absorbed by the B field. It's much far faster than light itself. And this is the JC quanta, coming down to a conducted field that everything is connected. So you have patterns of magnetic activity where the brain is measuring more gamma waves, and that's very, very fast, fine, like flute wave, and that's being carried on a very fairly horizontal wave, which is these lambda and epsilon waves being more flat. So what's the cycles where things are, where in the 80s, of course, this father was examining brainwave type and with all the associatedness where mental states are and behavioural manifestation where internal response is emitted. It's ever more by this state that you have of a specificity which has caused an inducted personality and expression and internal access. You can see what's going on the outside is something about giving you insight into what's going on inside, where the nerve is. So gamma waves, you've got Hertz cycles and things, which is like 31 and above up to 120 or more. You've got associated with more concentrated, heightened perception and insight. And so this is noticed, of course, alongside of clarity, where focus is, and things are a bit more fact-driven where processing is. Okay. So the observation anybody can have, it really is truth which is discoverable because we get acted upon, be discovered, you see. So the experience where you, like in a medicine beloved, for instance, you've got this beautiful allowed entrainment emanating, and you've got this natural condition where others really are fallen ever more into an alpha-ism and you're more relaxed medicine. So the entrainment of a state specificity really is engaging an array of sensory, motor complex and state specificity. So it's a modelness which is engaging your visceral sense, which is your sense of blood vessel and flow and things like this. And there's the vestibular sense, which is your sense of balance, and proprioception, which is your body part movements in relation to itself, and sensory complex, which is engaging all of these things more resonant, where entrainment is a beautiful brainwave entrainment, and you're looking at a synchronizedness where the outside world is a leverage inductiveness. And so as something is occurring on the outside world, something is happening on the inside, and you've got this external stimulus paired to some synesthesia going on, where your ambient set mood starts to have light flood into more where the corridors were really darkened and rooms darkened, and lighting all of this up, you see. So where pulsated sound is, these sorts of things. You've really got processing where a person's own brain is in alignment. And healers all emit more energetic waveform, which is more healing, of course, external rhythm and causing entrainment more and receptivity to this entrainment process. So a great healer evermore, you could imagine, is really what we're talking about. And might these people be more hard to find today because they're emitting epsilon wave and lambda, and they've got this beautiful carried piggyback gamma wave on top of it, which is like a flute sound. But what this is telling anybody is really that there's something scientific more, which is an entrainment, and people would be foolish not to look into this, all right? So in eye awareness, you've got this gamma wave, which is very persistent in eye awareness. You've got perception in whole brain functioning patterning. And life with nutrition, you've got this supportiveness and cell rejuvenation. You've got cleansing and clearing up things more. You've got an outward lived meditation in eye awareness, and this is promoting more state specificity for you to have more of your nerve force kept inside. So healers should have an ability, of course, to emit these telluric force, which is scientific, which it's coming out of your hands and passing through everything the sound, which is more three-dimensional to you. And so in the 80s, early, of course, it was me really to look at all sorts of devices like the squid, for instance, and using measuring of the galvanic magnetrolysis and this sort of thing going on. But life colloid magnetic field, which life food and vegetable all have a field around them, can show you whether life is existed or not, or versus it's really cooked out and dead. So the squid, because the super quantum interference device really is measuring life colloidal magnetic field and then using a whole range of other things to look at where something was living versus something is dead in the field. So life force, which really you're talking about plasma, it's like a beautiful sunrise at the golden hour, and you've got colours, which is ranging yellow and magenta, and it's sort of reaching you ever more like a subtle surface does, you see. So it's very deep colours of hues of blue where the twilight is, for instance, and the bright, warm colours of sunrise. These are all gentle, transitional senses of things which is part of what somebody could be using to help heal and projecting what this is. So it's where you've got a faded away, so where the dark comes on and everything sort of is joined more, and then you've got the gradual shifting and clearing away of all the dark as a gradual brightening is, and a positive health, you see, where your circadian rhythm is, and ultradian means cycles within the day. So if you're waking up, of course, and you're having the smell of coffee in your life, where morning is, it's an example of just how aromatic and all your synaptic junctions all cause you to really have a proper tissue protoplasm of cellular membrane where you've got good recall for what you needed to do and everything. Memory really is a waveform stored in the tissue protoplasm, and it's like language is motor movement, pattern motor movement, because it's pattern motor movement that makes this sound. So each specific state has a motor movement behind it where you in language and the sound that you're hearing. So all of this is transforming and pressed more where the tissue is, and it does this through you're able to access that memory through an accessing cue, which triggers then the whole part. So a small bit can trigger the whole, you see. So it's you've got a decentralized condition, and you've got this within your own self, a greater sense of a centralized nervous system within your own self of a life, and a logarithm that's specific to this. So modern neuroscience really isn't really a Google mind where you don't have proper matter of fact what is basic, or something is very biased where things are and set up in the program and it's not established, so that alphabet superman it doesn't have a central organized nervous system at all. And what complexity there is where memory is being triggered for you, and what is the activities that can help trigger these things. It's a signature, which is part of all which is needed, is for you to be present more, which is meaning and associated. You've got serial type of processing, which is memory, which is really, really big inside ourselves. And so this is all happening, right? Yes, where you've got this nerve network. So the protoplasm describes scientifically where cells are composed of life colloid organelle, each of you can find in nature. And a cell is a conglomeration of spore and double spore, building blocks, colloid of life and life colloid, as living independently with their own DNA. And red blood corpuscle is not a cell because it doesn't have any DNA. And then it's a protoplasm of a double spore life colloid aggregate fused and differentiated into a red blood corpuscle. So cellular membrane and the brain and the cell and life colloid are multidimensional, and it really has the capacity to be able to store memory, and just as water does if it has life in it. So cellular membrane isn't just a barrier, but resonant and coherent. And so you have to think about, well, water is also in a coherent state. So colloid of life is life colloid, and little bits of things which is present where something was joined, where water was, but the substrate no longer has existed there, still has an impact on the water, you see. So life colloid membrane has cavity resonance and conducts all this on a JC contour across the space of the vacuum. And cell membrane has transducer and receiver types of conduction, resonant frequency. So tissue really just isn't dead connected tissue. And memory is a waveform, comes through your outer aesthetic sense as well, which is through your connective tissue. And the protoplasm, which is posterior to your motor, premotor cortex, is where you end up getting things stored during the night, and so that becomes a bit more permanent memory. So you've got property where tissue is, and a transform where tissue is, and what's left is the signature captured in of the synaptic junction that was given off of a specific waveform, and that functional cue, which is stored in the tissue protoplasm, can act as an accessing cue, you see, which it does, triggering the behaviour that's engaged more, where serial processing then is in a whole range of associated, specialised, interconnected network where neuron is. So what becomes hardwired evermore is what's persistent and what's compulsive, you see. So what's automatic is actually happening more from your brainstem up. And so what's repeated, where firing is between same neuron, you've got phagocyte-like activity and synaptic junction and function. And all between this, you've got a transform, which is a readout. And so, that's stored in the tissue protoplasm. So what's strengthening all as a connection is going beyond just the thought that you've got a nerve system you've got a serious nerve system through your connective tissue itself, and you've got a readiness potential which flows down the myelin sheathing and does that long before an action potential is set. And it does that through the semiconductive condition of the fat. That's the myelin sheathing that's around the nerve, creating a readiness potential. So what's strengthening where any activity is and the fronting that's needed of a current, you've got long-term potential where you've got change, where the synaptic strength is, and you've got perfect ability for memory, learning, and behaviour. And life colloid itself is life form, you see. So you'd be very hard-pressed not to consider that any nervous system doesn't exist, where these life colloid are themselves in a nociceptive system, which is something which is to bring into the play of the brain when you're thinking about all of it. So what's inductive, where you're saying, which like life colloid down in the smallest building blocks of yourself, and is also where the extracellular matrix is as well, and all of this is participating ever more in a dynamic magnetic moment in a conduction, you see. So it's like you've got where this is your iCloud, this is your iCloud of life, where it's a quantum, and conducting is via cavity resonance. And so you've got colloid of life, which is these very small building blocks, as small, got cavities inside them, each cavity resonance. And what you're noting really is effect across space, you see, through resonance. So it's not being travelled at all. So you've got pace, which is into the quadrillions of speed of light. And so now you've got superposition, you've got critical time too, one thing before another. And so all this is conducted where you and I are. And unless you thought superposition and critical time and these sorts of things into your own equation of everything, in fact, like a JC quantum field, it's like, well, that's been missing a bit, hasn't it? So a JC quantum magneticity really is a conductive point where it's a small pixelated dot in space, and so far smaller than hydrogen, of course, which you're going to go down into the vacuum where you can get a steady state kickoff there if you have inverse gravitational craft. So it's all where you're reducing everything, in fact, like light and sound is light. And so it's here you've got a deductive type of a rigidness, which can, for your membrane where tissue is, have a function as a nerve cell does, and transform vibration that's stored where the tissue protoplasm is, and building blocks where cell structure is. You've got HCO2, which is this life water. And so you've got three types of water there. And HCO2 is a type of water which is the most structured form that it can exist as. And life colloid, and you've got this play of that coherence and structure and a quality of a memory of coherence that can come back out of that. So it's observed, of course, what's triggered is making something physical by its hard wiring, and that's being repeated. And so colloid of life are very receptive to resonant signal and organelle level that's interior of your cell. And so the aggregation, fusion, differentiation that goes on, which is how things grow or de-differentiate, not to mitotic cell division. And so on a cellular level, things aren't so distinct like you could think, okay? You've got to go below the cell level, and now you're looking at things more. Otherwise, a lot of other, which is proper information, sort of very parasitical sort of conditions of what distinction could be, yet some complex cognitiveness as a process is existing where cell memory is. And through the eyes of magneticity, you've got this helping code what's going on for you, this new information. So you've got this happening, and you're putting things in what is more coming to be more precognitive for you. And your random phenomenon generator has got getting information that's stored in the channels below, and so you're getting what's sorted and categorized is something you've been memorizing where channels are. And so you've got a unique quality ever more versus some things are very deficient about that. And what's aiding your insight, you see, and what's getting correctly done. So your hippocampus, which is the first bit of tissue just around the brainstem, or neocortex that wraps under and connects there, and it has a steady state flow. it's the only area of your whole brain, I think, which has got this steady state flow, a one-way spin. So it's located where the brain's temporal lobes are, and so underneath where it is, you've got this having to be kept pristine. Tissue could have become caked though with calcium cement, microplastic, magnetite, and all of those sorts of things. So it's critical where you're looking at what's becoming ever more exponentially like an increment that's sneaking up where things are of that sediment suddenly to be deficient, and what is it that you're capable of, and your episodic sort of memory where you're focused, where attention is. And is this something that you've really got greater ability right now to have later access to? Yes. So your episodic memory or your autographical type of specific events and things in memory is especially like just brewed coffee in the morning. You've got a memory and the day prior are triggered because of the smell of something that they heard. But like what's automatic where life colloid is the cyclicness of pleomorphism, meaning many changing forms, which it has the capacity to do in a life cycle. So all of this is related to mold, fungus, and yeast. And so colloid of life can also be engaged where transmutation is ongoing. And what's not autobiographical or auto-life graphic, auto-life graphic is really a morphogenic field and a quantum formed is well below the level of hydrogen. You've got 4D printing. So cellular memory isn't just what people could have thought, yet colloid of life and organelle interior to give you life vicarious. So you're commanding a ship overall, and the life colloid terrain really is kept proper in the interior of the cell in the cytoplasm. That's the fluid inside the cell. So life colloid, we're all, they have their own reproductive system. You've got DNA, you've got memory like a library, and whatever's happened via mitotic division isn't correct at all there. But facts of physiology, the memory and past experiences, and tissue protoplasm with life colloid is sensing and giving you this ability through a vacuum resonance. So immunology and memory in these things all allow you to have faster response. So whatever subsequent was lacked, you've got a better vital terrain getting put back in there. So what somebody could do is try, of course, to explain how life below the level of a cell is. What do you know about this? Yeah. So it's life that's below the level of a cell. And how does a cell arise? And what's spontaneous involutedness where life is seemingly and where it wasn't? So it's a simple fetal cell which has got its own recapitulative past, hasn't it? And it did come through a phase of things where fermentation was the way that it got its energy through aerobic glycolysis instead of oxidative metabolism. It has a memory of that where the DNA is and everything. And so, you know, what is neoplasm but simple fetal endoblastic cells that are really in a triggered mast cell growth condition using aerobic glycolysis instead of oxidative metabolism. And so where you've got your energy from aerobic glycolysis, which is neoplasm, fetal endoblastic cells all formed where pleomorphism was inside cells and still has a memory and could have been switched back, which that is what goes on where that is. So gene expression where that is under a non-vital negative redox. You don't have proper microvoltage gradient, and so you've got little things in niches and stuff where the body is not kept, you see. So life colloid cycle where you become where that becomes a red blood corpuscle, which 1,500 of them as double spores all fit shoulder to shoulder across the red blood corpuscle. So it's not a cell, but it's corpuscle, and it's made up of the double spore assembling under a poor terrain red blood corpuscle sort of could reverse differentiate to aggregation, fusing and differentiating into a mold, fungus, yeast, or a bacteria. because that's of its life cycle, where it would have turned to its own demise because of the terrain that you didn't keep proper. So life under the microscope, of course, where study is looking at this, you could see how it can remember a magnetic orientation. You've got aleacidic magnetics, which light and sound and radio frequency all capture, and quorum sensing going on, where some hanged sort of chemical signal exists in the physical forces where it's influencing memory of the whole more for the cells. This, as we're talking, is all stored in the tissue protoplasm. So cellular membrane, where life colloid is, you've got membrane, and you've got life form, where its own life colloid is, it's its future, and response to are more calculated. So the thalamus, where your brain is, and the thymus, down where your breastplate is, well below your thyroid there is your thymus. And so all of these glands, in particular right now, as we could talk about the thyroid, talk about the thymus. That's a beautiful butterfly-shaped organ. Most people don't really know much about that, the thymus gland. You've got immune cells maturing there. You've got keratin tissue, which it's made up out of. You've got these T and NK lymphocyte cells that come in there, and it's really then learning how to recognize what's you and what's foreign. And over some 3 months, they mature more there. And the T and D cell all develop memory, allowing quick recognition to respond to previously encountered pathogen and things, you see. We didn't say that memory is not going on this level. It's like, oh my God, yes, it is. So its process is vital. If you've not thought about this, stop. Because you have to look, you have to see long-term for having proper immunity. Life colloid and also cellular membrane is where you have a memory and you have ability to remember, and past encounters and events and altered, that's where gene activity is. You've got this without changing any DNA sequence itself. And so changing the post-translational sort of modification that goes on where histone, for instance, is, and a lot of people, we're not going to say don't have stones with histamine, are histodaltic or histopenic. So adult tissue, which retains simple sort of fetal endoplasmic state of memory, it does contain DNA that's inscribed where embryonic usefulness of aerobic glycolysis was, and the cellular cytoplasm would ferment protein and fat and things like this. And using the process of aggregation, fusion, and differentiation, you see the developmental sort of history. So a cell arose from a red blood corpuscle originally, and that red blood corpuscle has the capacity to become a cell through aggregating, fusing, and differentiating of its double spore into all the organelle that's needed. So homeostasis, where the terrain is kept vital, is so persistent. You can't have this on-off sort of thing. But a state of the gene codedness is, and something is either on or off. And so it's certain that various things like your gene all are triggered by proper methylation and hydrolysis and heat and cold shock protein, you see. And what's the use of far infrared energy as a science for helping produce a really pretty good end outcome? So life food, Jubb cell rejuvenation, uses monosaturated fat and, like medium chain triglyceride, and people could gain weight back and get exercise where muscle is, and you can see weight regain and on a likely program. You see, so what's retained as a memory really is triggered evermore, where you bring a little bit more fat in that's coming from coconut, like in this product. So clearing away wherever the sticks are, so you've got proper eddies of flow. You've got life colloid where proper memory is. You've got a functioning, and this suppresses particular gene and turns things off and on. And so what is making your red blood corpuscle aggregate and fuse differentiate into an immune cell, which it can, or a body cell, which it can. And what's the receptive with programming that goes on where such turning is of an adult cell into an induced totally potent red blood corpuscle back again, which it can be, and all of this is the carried out function going on to produce adenosine triphosphate where your body is, and that energy is being passed on through to the tissue. So what you're doing is unleashing ever more a total potential. You're getting this more through Jubb cell rejuvenation. You're applying ever more whole brain functioning in your prudence. You become ever more eye-aware. You learn what is it mean to be eye-aware. That's your empty centre and just having care. It's truth which is discoverable, of course, because it's this fast approach more time-worn, which is giving to you here. It's how your non-nerve cell really learn. And let's just go beyond where Google might have been programmed to have what insight you're given by AI. But let's make this more actually scientific. So it's a massive error if you don't consider the radical biasing that's gone on, where you've only got 3 states of matter to start with, which you've got to quickly put in the gel and the plasma phase, okay? All right. And so it's radical. Otherwise, you've got a lot of unscientific reason that's going on that's ridiculous. And where receptivity is to new cell rejuvenation and memory, you've got an associated integrated sort of congruent structured state and something which is contextual, so it's valid and it's repeatable. So life colloid magnicity is looking at memory transfer through cavity resonance, and the colloid of life assembly and magnaphoresis, life colloid transmutation really from orthophilic nutrient, that's nutrient which is great with nature. So a lot of stuff is not great with nature at all, like a lot of minerals which are not orthophilic at all. So what happens where that goes on? You've got the basis of memory and RNA all get supposed to be passed through the body and colloid of life, and it's on an atom sensitivity where your nucleus is. So you've got, how much is it of a role where all this is important? And if the body, which it exists, of course, has never been spoken before, if you've got this alliesthetic sensation, yes, that also allows you to be sedated and things. And you've got more RNA. So if life colloid membrane, which you could look at the blood and see what the quality of health is, absolute certain. You've got living life colloid in the blood. You would have this in the plasma as well. And a mutual lived assistance always is of primary storage of plasma membrane and the storage of in a JC quanta. You've got data stored in a jubbit, which is not a qubit because it's not in a cube. It's in a triovoid shape. It's called a jubbit. So it's three-dimensional, and in real-time storage, you've got three-dimensional magnetron assembly there, and you've got an exact number of jubbit you see in one evolution, one spin. So a transform of JC quanta is a fractal, and it's a plasma state which is able to, as a fractal in storage, give instruction and associated contextual sort of stimulus. So current, which is located, which is like a motherboard in your body, and that is your brain of your membrane. And so you're looking at this, it's allowing it more for a speed as a JC quanta, where it goes across the vacuum, and that's the vacuum absorbing things far faster than light, certainly. That's superposition, you see. And so, this is activity, which is reading and writing, primary storage, where life colloid membrane is. So life colloid membrane providing you with your own processor, and on a JC quanta, you're really looking at superposition, like we're saying, which people could call that spooky action at distance or something. You've got critical time, so you've got, like spider silk being made by a spider, for instance. So accessing data and instruction, you've got memory and storedness and the pattern and the speed of all of this. So you've got quadrillion units in a light second. Too many things could have gone on to cause what came forward in the light second to be of some change, conditioning. So the vagal enteric nervous system is the nervous system that sits above your autonomic nervous system, really, and that is the big nerve that connects your brain and your gut and your gut and your brain, in your brain. So it's like from the 12th cranial nerve all the way down to your 5th cranial nerve, sort of thing. So if you've got three types of memory processing, you've got register and short, you've got sensory register, of course, you've got short-term memory and long-term memory, and you've got all these life colloids, really double spore, having capacity for totipotency to become anything needed at the site of injury, and life colloid membrane functional stored memory, where this is in a on a 4D level in a morphogenic field. You've got double spore assembling and building block internal of where the cell is and within the blood, and you've got this T cells and things, and hematopoietic sort of stem cells that come about also from the red blood corpuscle. And so you've got processing, and this is all possessed where life colloid memory is, you see. So it's an ability to retain a record of the past state, an experience moment where imprintedness is enabling a respondentness, where difference is to make a future, where stimuli is, and the process often is linked to the life colloid epigenetic changes that go on. And so life colloid science observes more memory, which is stored in water that is coherent. You've got an entrained condition and a recovery of things many times later, like even experiments show many months later just as water, so even longer. So it's a brand new idea where you've got no nerve there, apparent, and memory is definite, shown in other subjects like organ transplants and things. So considering which is a high possibility, which the story is being put where it's complete, you've got life colloid memory, you see, in the skin and the nerve, and or it's formed from the ectoderm stage in embryology. So the vestibular sense and ethmoid and the skin and the life colloid all are unique, which is of a form memory and its connectedness to each other to have a superposition well and truly. So including all wet and dry triggeredness, you've got where the first breath is, you've got immune memory, you've got T-cell remembering pathogen fast so that you have response, your memory at a site where colloidal spore are, and cellular level is seen. You've got skin inflammatory types of memory and red blood corpuscle sort of excavated where that is primed, and through aggregation, fusion and differentiation, transform themselves into whatever's needed. So to stop a future inflammation, and all cellular memory is from your DNA and mutations, which is caused, like it's a factor, like cystic fibrosis, for instance, you see, can it be impacting that, and also UV radiation or UVB or not having proper levels of what this is. So your instinct, it's very gestalt, it's from the whole, it's a sensation which is sudden evermore like some void where everything else is an effusion sort of state, and things it's explained. And so whatever it is that's genetic determined, of course, you've got a formed gripe or a groupthink, haven't you? And all that formed groupthink is something genetically determining things to be something combined where you are where your totality is. So it's a common sense that it's uncommon wisdom that you got formed from a process that's reflexively, habitually about development, and that the constructive, spontaneous creative intelligence of your plasticity is this mechanism that's ever observed more, it's instinctual. So memory formation isn't just restricted to the reactiveness of something not being the same per se, but you're taking an implicit and explicit non-verbal and verbal patterning and vestibular usage, and all of this to be unique where the end product is. So life colloid equivalent, have this sort of a root engram or ingram. So the vestibular sense in its use associates and dissociates you and does so on a life colloidal level. The life colloid can sense what's up or what's down, what's forward, back. So it's really you where the life colloid is and what the movement is toward what is present and away from what's not. And using the vestibular sense this way versus on that's been messed up. So it needs to be reset. So noticing whatever is needing to be put so that an update system can have a default, which is very instinctive. So it's just like you and I, we have this beautiful bluebird day and we're looking at how a butterfly could be searching for its food, and it's got thought of things as an adult monarch. You could see, and if you own the notes where you are, where the butterfly is, to drink the nectar of variety of flowering plant, it's sort of really the caterpillar's feeling inside itself that how can it survive? Its only lead nutrient is the milkweed plant. And so how incredible, because cardinaloid is what's in the milkweed, and it's beautiful because the monarch that's perched on this, it's a special sap that's protective and making the caterpillar as adult butterfly also unpalatable to eat, so toxic. And so it wards off predators. So it's very, if you are to be leery of the more of evidence abounding of the more, whereas actually quantum superposition and critical timing is of one element before another, like in spider silk, and you've got an amorphogenic sort of field which is defined in the life colloid terrain as a region that is where the embryo is of some collectedness, where cell is of its interaction and forms a specific discrete structure. So the limb or a heart where these fields allow an embryo to maintain its developmental pattern as they could, where self-organisation is, it's sort of a recoveredness for injury and to form complete structure. So the complete experimental sort of demonstration where Jubb cell rejuvenation and research is, and Jubb magnicity is how you've got this blueprint template and this is formed in the ether from magneton cluster. So conduction by cavity resonance is what's going on with AC quanta is across the fractal space as a vacuum, and it's not travelling at conducted resonance, you see. So it's looking at a red black corpuscle as totally potent and suddenly sort of pleomorphically seeing how its aggregated fused to differentiate it into a immune cell, that's right, or a body cell, you see. So it's specific areas where your eye is or a receptor needing to be, what's receiving something that's interpreted. It's all from a patterned signaling, that like comes from your foot, or you learned how to write, but then you can transfer that to your foot. So it's achieving what's the correct anatomical or local form, how physiognomy is in somatotyping, and how where this fourth dimensional transform is, you've got this morphogenic field. And keep in mind is what is analog sculpted in the whole brain functioning and your own personal development. You've got observation over many years of looking at accessing a physiology that triggers state specificity of your own being in the moment right now and being more associated, you see, and having access into trigger you to be more associated where you are present. Okay. So just wrapping things up a bit, your red black corpuscle is totally potent. It's seen under a microscope that becomes anything that's needed as a template that's there, morphogenic in the field that it can grow into, and you've got levels of hydrogen, which is all the way down to life colloid, which aggregate, fuse, and differentiate and assemble into their structure. So morphogenic field is critical and crucial where the development of life colloid is from a red blood corpuscle, where the spine is and where spore is. You can see a spore, of course, and you can see sperm. You can see a fertilized egg, and all of these things came from a red blood corpuscle. So the assembly of life colloid, where a fact is that happens, and like stone forming, for instance, it does through these nano life colloids aggregating, fusing, differentiating the stone in the body. So what's available where your red blood corpuscle is totally potent, where a region of injury is, you've got cells where the region is a double spore from ASD, as aggregation, fusion, differentiation from a red blood corpuscle back into a cell or a substance that's needed, you see, at the site. So evidence exists, of course, of this JC corner behind the evidence, like you're looking at, we're talking about morphogenic file where influence is an ability for a fallen bud, for instance, to grow easily and to be seen growing into a complete limb. So you've got this cloud of life colloid as a memory bank and this cavity resonance. You've got aggregating, fusion, differentiation going on to assemble and disassemble. And you've got these memory transplanted where different parts of embryo is demonstrated. The existence of a morphogenic field is, you could see the fact of this is so. And everything is an arrested embryological developmental stage of an organism. And so you've got the sum of everything that's non-localized and patterning and signaling, and you've got receptive tissue, including its chemical morphogenic gradients and voltage potential where things are. But this is the influence where your cell is. It's information which is coming through from a JC contra-formed resonance waveform, you see, and emitted from adjacent tissue. You've got Jubb inside membrane life colloid organelle, which weave spore and organisms to continue to exist more with a future pattern more where some mutual benefitness is. So you've got this assisted transitional template which provides a magnetization and tractoring of magnetons to have tissue come to exist, which, like a seed, already has a big form of itself. It's like close to the width of the trunk of the tree it would grow into. So a magnetized, kept intact, guided life colloid assembly is where a cell differentiates into a immune cell, for instance, and then back into a red blood corpuscle, and then back into specific tissue. And so you're looking at the double spore, being recycled back and forward, and this is really what's going on. So eye awareness is an example of a story of how spiritual beloveds sort of emit more a field of energy that surrounds them, and you're looking at a magnetic moment that's a static and also dynamic field spiritually, and not two distinct concepts at all separate, yet everything connected more and explored vestibular-wise is your body sense and your whole body movement in language is predicating how you're using the vestibular sense. So I know that some of this information is new, but if you pay attention to the podcast and things, slow but sure, you're going to be picking up ever more of a proper collected balance in your overall perception about everything. So it's a tasteful example that somebody could have kept a point, you see, where some book is or anything. But life colloid, a morphogenic field, is a fourth-dimensional plasma activatedness and amounting what you could see to differentiated eventual structure, which then is an arrested embryological developmental stage of a life colloidal organism. So the 4D printedness, which is well below hydrogen, matter just doesn't fall off after hydrogen. So it's really an organised body of life colloid as life hydrate is within. And it's very important, of course, where plant animal is, eye awareness and vibratory pattern that is. Yeah. So something comes along from all of it, doesn't it? And someone becomes to have more of an overall awareness. And then new concepts, wordedness, where things are, these all come to be more like prolific and easy and excellent access to what the meaning of it all is. But it comes about because you're allowing it all in. That you could sit somewhere and you could describe this, yes. Yeah, could you call for it? Yeah. One thing is we're describing scientifically what goes on where your brain is, and where someone, like we just said, hasn't considered superposition and hasn't considered critical time and these sorts of things, which you have a model of here, and you've got quadrillion units in a light second. So you have to come down to what this is to have a proper measurement about things, and it just dwarfs any other measurement that's existed because it's not accurate, you see. Yeah. When you measure something with a big, huge stick, like a mile thick, and then you come down and measure it with a foot, and you go around a whole coastline with a foot instead of a mile, suddenly it can be 50,000 times bigger, but it could be exact, you see. Whereas the other measurement wasn't exact, it was too generalised. A lot of stuff was deleted, and in the construction wasn't a proper model of actual nature. And the finer measurement that you come, it dwarfs anything else that existed after that, you see. Anyway, it's something. So what we've been just talking about today is the colloid of life, Moore's building block, visible, with your eye relative on a microscope of things formed in the visible wave spectrum, and how that colloid of life forms with others to form into a spore. And now somebody's looking at that and thinking, well, this must be life because we've got, these conglomerations together a little bit, the colloid of life, in a spore, and then that spore joins with another spore, of course, fusing to form into a double spore. And now that is the building block of all interior organelle of a cell, yes. And proteins and fat and carbohydrate and these sorts of things are produced in the body. So these are all things which is really revolutionary insight, actually. Yeah. Anyway. All right, mate. Well, we'll sign off. Hope you're having a really great day as you've been listening to this show. How incredible. And we've got some incredible shows coming up here. Yeah, so stay tuned. Love you, Lucy, and love you guys.